welcome to another Vlogmas video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. And today it's a reading wrap up of what I've read so far in December. So I sometimes throughout the year, when I do my reading wrap ups where I wrap up what I've been reading, I sometimes do a mid-month wrap up, which is what I'm doing now. Sometimes I just leave it all till the end. But today's wrap up will be the only wrap up that's happening in December. Itchy nose, because by the end of the month, I mean, all I read basically in December is Christmas books. So by the end of the month, it's just all Christmas books. Christmas is over, no one cares. So I do this mid-month wrap up, and that is the only wrap up that I'll do this year, for December this year. If you want to follow the rest of my reading, you can follow me on Instagram at Lauren and the Books, and I wrap up everything that I read on there. You'll probably get to see it quicker over there anyway. I do both all year round. Anyway, let's talk about my t-shirt. So this is a ASOS t-shirt. I can't remember how old it is. I've got two, weirdly, I've got two sort of Christmassy themed t-shirts, both of which are skeleton. Have a merry skelly Christmas with a whole host of skeleton family just sitting there nice having a merry skelly Christmas. And then underneath I've got this long sleeved body which is from Primark, again from a good few years ago. I really like it. It feels very posh. Not very posh, but it feels very posh. It's also very, very warm. David and I went out for a walk down the beach today. My lordy, I had so many layers on and it was boiling. Right, anyway, let's talk about the books that I've read so far. So it's the 12th today when I'm filming this, Sunday. That's why I'm in sort of like comfy, untreated hair, no makeup on, having a lovely time. The 12th, and I've read 10 books. So up until the 10th, I'd read a book every day, which is really good. I mean, a lot of the reading that I do in December is picture books or listening to audiobooks, which are slightly shorter. But yeah, it's going, 10 books in 12 days, well done me. So first of all, let's start with the first book that I read, which was Diary of a Christmas Elf by Ben Miller. I listened to this on Libby, which is my library's app where you can get out books, either ebooks or you can get that was me swiping an ebook, or you can get out audiobooks. So I would highly, highly recommend seeing what service your library offers. There's another one called Overdrive. There's another one, something Cloud maybe, but yeah, and you can get out free audiobooks. So this is a great alternative to Audible or like wherever you might pay to get your audiobooks. You can see what's on there. Anyway, this book, I'll talk about that along because I haven't really got much to say about this book. So Diary of a Christmas Elf. So this is sort of like a fun, fast-paced children's book. It's not written for me, but yeah, I feel like there was just one too many poo jokes for me, particularly about like sort of like reindeer shitting themselves and toilet jokes and things like that. It was fun. I really liked the way it was written in like a diary entry, and there was parts of it that were really funny, like on one of them, I can't remember the elf's name. This was the first book I read, so it feels like a long time ago, but he was like, nothing happened today, nothing happened again today, nothing happened again today. So like, I feel like there's adult humour in there, but mainly it was poo and reindeers doing a poo joke, so I wasn't really that into it. Next up was The Christmas Pine by Julia Donaldson. I've got that here. This is a picture book. Julia Donaldson is very, very renowned for her children's stories here in the UK, and this is her new one this year with illustrations by Victoria Sandoy. This was sort of like very, very, almost like indulgently melancholy for me. It's about a pine in the forest. Beautiful. I won't show you all the illustrations because I want to leave some level of, look at those awful nails, I want to leave some level of mystery. But yeah, like sort of like almost a bit indulgently, like I said, like a bit sad, because at the end, like, it's about weirdly, this is the second book, the first of two books that I've read about the tree that comes from Norway to go and be in Trafalgar Square in London, and then sort of what happens to that tree afterwards. And yeah, beautiful illustrations, absolutely beautiful, and made me feel sort of like quite Christmassy. Yeah, gave it 3 stars. Next up, another book, and I gave this one 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. This is Where Snow Angels Go by Maggie O'Farrell. I'm quite a big fan of Maggie O'Farrell's writing anyway, but this is her, I never know how to describe this, but I always say sort of like the older end of younger readers, because although it's got these beautiful illustrations, honestly, the illustrations on it and the way that silver ink is used on these already shiny pages, it honestly feels like magic at times. So as you can see, it's got quite big passages of font as well, so this might be for like an older reader. I'm just trying to find one of those very, as I was saying, special sort of moments where this snow angel visits her, and like the effect of this, it's really not coming across. I mean, maybe it's just one of those wonderful moments that you only get when you're holding a book in your hand, but honestly, the addition of that silver, well, I'm speechless. Look at me, that's speechless. Christmas. The addition of that silver ink on some already shiny pages, absolutely gorgeous. Really, really beautiful. And yeah, beautiful illustrations that I don't really want to spoil any more for it. And also, the storyline is like this snow angel is acting as a sort of guardian angel towards this young girl. And yeah, just lovely about it. Not so much Christmassy, more wintry, but so beautiful. And guys, underneath this dust jacket, look at it. Absolutely gorgeous. Really, really lovely. Would make a beautiful gift. A beautiful, beautiful gift. Really, really nice. Next up was another very short children's audiobook I listened to. This one I think was 39 minutes long. It's At the Frost Fair by Emma Carroll. And it wasn't until I'd finished this book that I actually realised that I'd already read this. I read this in a short story collection. I can't remember what it's called. I've since given it to my sister, but I'm sure it was edited by Abby Elphinstone, or maybe Abby Elphinstone's got a story in there. That name is very much at the front of my mind when I'm thinking about this book that I read it in, and that was a collection of wintry short stories and for children, for like middle grade, and that's what this was. It was a short story about a young girl and her travelling back in time to attend a frost fair on the Thames, like on one winter when it's frozen over, I think in like the 1700s. I'd quite like to attend a frost fair. Maybe I'm a bit slippery, I'm a bit unsteady on my old feet. But it was a very enjoyable story, and I've actually gone on to buy this book for my goddaughter Molly for Christmas. And I've wrapped it up now, it's down here. But the illustrations are lovely as well, they accompany it well. And it's in the same vein as this, sort of like a picture book for older readers, so maybe one that you would read alongside them. But yeah, beautiful little story, gave it 3 stars, lovely, lovely. Next page, next up was the Christmas Bookshop by Jenny Colgan. I gave this 2 stars. Now, I've got quite a lot to say about this book, and I've said quite a lot of it, both on Instagram and in other videos, but this isn't really my genre of reading, the sort of women's contemporary fiction and romance and things like that. And I've tried to read a few of these books as the years have gone, and particularly at the beginning of this year, tried to read a few bits. But I was drawn into this. I was going through my library and seeing what Christmas books they had coming in, and they had this, and I didn't realise because it didn't show a picture, it just said the Christmas Bookshop, and I was like, yes please. So I put a thing in for it. Then when the picture arrived, I was like, oh, I know that author from, I think she's the like the Cupcake Cafe author, and I think I'd read one of those sort of back in the days and not really got on with it, and I thought, no, I'll give it a go. And when I got it, it was on, there's so many reservations on it, it had a 2-week wait on it, so I knew I was gonna have to start it literally the first day of December, which I did, and I got it finished by the 7th, so it took me a week to read. And there was aspects of this which I really enjoyed, and I felt compelled to go back to the story, even though, again, as I said, it's not a genre that I'm used to reading or have enjoyed reading in the past. And I found that the sort of the focus in this book here was about sisterhood and about a pair of sisters, and I was really into that. It was set in Edinburgh in a bookshop which primarily sold Christmas books, and all of these things were lovely, and like I said, felt compelled to go back to it every single time. But the casual fat phobia in these books, it just astounds me that this is still happening in 2021. And I know for a fact, so I always used to think it was things like, oh, in these women's contemporary fiction, someone always goes to somewhere where they don't normally live, which is what happens in these books, and falls in love with a boy and blah blah blah, and then maybe moves somewhere else and gets a new haircut and falls in love with another boy, and basically like men solve the problem. Men is what a man is the missing piece of your life. And what I liked about this book is that it wasn't like that. Like I said, the focus was on sisterhood. It was about her achieving a job that she found out she was good at and things like that. There was a love story in there, and yes, that was fine, but that wasn't my favourite part of the book. But my least favourite part of the book was this casual fat phobia that is just dripped in throughout the book. Things like her saying that Edinburgh is a really good place to walk to work because there's loads of hills that you can work off all those Christmas lattes you've been drinking. Things that are just, I just, when I read that, I'm literally like, that reaction. Things like describing somebody as fat, or being surprised that someone was fat, or fat being like the worst thing you could describe somebody at. One of the younger children in this book gets called fat at school, and the reaction from the mother that she's been called fat, whether or not this child is fat, is like she's been called the worst thing in the whole entire world. And just it's just drip fed the whole way through, and how that sort of bit seems to be the focus of everyone's minds. Now, I mentioned this, I can't remember what video I mentioned it in, but somebody commented, or maybe it was even the Patreon Bookshop live show, somebody commented and said, well, that is like the thoughts that flow through a lot of women's heads. And yes, I have been that person who was maybe thinking at one point in my life, not now, I'm fully accepting and in love with my bod, that oh, it's good that I'm walking up this hill because I'm burning off this or whatever. But wouldn't it be refreshing? Wouldn't it be nice if you could just have an escape from everything and read a fucking book about a Christmas bookshop in Edinburgh at Christmas time with a lovely story about a couple of sisters, and a lovely story about a girl finding out that she's very good at book selling and can start and has a career path there, and yeah, maybe even falling in love if that's what you want, without mentioning the fact that you need to walk up a hill to work off a fucking latte, or thinking, oh, I won't have that mince pie because of this. Like, it would just be nice. And you know what? It would have been a 3-star for me if it hadn't have been for those casual little things. And early doors, it happened twice very quickly within the sort of first 50 pages. And I thought, if another one of those happens soon, I'm giving up on this. And it didn't. So I did get a big swathe of book where there wasn't much like that in. But then towards the end, it started happening again. That's when the younger girl gets called fat at school and all of the hell breaks loose. So yeah, there we go. So those are my thoughts on that. Would I read another Jenny Colgan book? Like, maybe another Christmas one like this, but just stop putting in fucking stuff about people being fat. Like, people can be fat and happy. I'm fat and happy. Right, next up was The King and the Christmas Tree by A.N. Wilson. And speaking of Patreon Book Club, I read this book on Patreon Book Club. So on Patreon, Patreon Cozy Reading Night, Christmas Cozy Reading Night, I had high designs. I was thinking, oh, I'm going to read this because from the front cover and actually from the blurb, I thought this was a children's book or a middle grade book. This is The King and the Christmas Tree by A.N. Wilson, illustrated by Alexis Bruchon. And it is what I thought was a fictionalised tale of how that very Christmas tree we were talking about earlier finds its way to London every year to stand in Trafalgar Square from Norway. I knew it would go into sort of like the history of that and why that happened the first time. And it wasn't a fictionalised version of that. It was a very sort of wordy, but with lovely illustrations, sort of history of the Second World War and sort of like war politics and war movements and things like that, and stuff that I just really wasn't expecting to read. So it didn't feel very Christmassy at all, because the bit about the Christmas tree is actually a quite small thing. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 2 stars. Like, it was fine, but yeah, I think it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But I imagine there are a lot of people who'd really, really enjoy this, and I'm actually thinking of giving it to David's dad, because I think he would really, really enjoy that. So yeah, it surprised me, but in a way where I really, really just thought it was going to be a middle grade story about this Christmas tree making its way to the old, but it's much to London, but it's much about King Haakon the 7th, and yeah, lots of stuff there, so interesting. Next up was an audiobook I listened to, and that was A Nancy Drew Christmas by Carolyn Keene. Does anyone know, is Carolyn Keene like a name that books are written under? Like, I think Anne M. Martin, who wrote the Babysitter Club books. I don't know if Anne M. Martin was an actual person. I think people maybe just wrote books like that under the name Anne M. Martin. Is that the case with Carolyn Keene? Because I feel like Nancy Drew has been going on for years. Like, I used to read Nancy Drew books when I was young, and I think they've been going on since before then. Anyway, this is a more recent Nancy Drew book. As I said, it's called A Nancy Drew Christmas. And I had quite a fun time with this, you know. I enjoyed it. It was very Christmassy, and it was set in a ski lodge and sort of like brought bang up to date with sort of like environmental motives and looking at innovative ways to run a lodge that's in keeping with environmental things and things like that, and I enjoyed all of that. I also quite enjoyed sort of like Nancy Drew. Nancy is I mean, she's her age is never mentioned in these books. When I used to read the books literally 20 years ago, she was maybe even longer than 20 years ago, because I'm 35 now, so yeah, longer than 20 years ago. I wasn't reading them when I was 15. Like over 20 years ago. She was a teenager then, so I don't know if like they've just brought them bang up to date, because she was still talking about her dad coming to visit and things like that, so I assume she's still a teenager in this. And she's in a ski accident very early on, a suspicious one, which involves her being in a wheelchair for the rest of the book, and her sort of like just whizzing her way around this lodge and saying, right, you meet me in the investigating a crime that no one's asked her to investigate, and saying to people, right, Chef Dada, you meet me in the front entrance now, bye. And they're like just wheeling her way down there and just waiting for this chef to turn up, even though they've got a restaurant to run and things like that, because Nancy's got a question she needs to ask her. Like, I just felt, well done, Nancy, barefaced cheek. I enjoyed it. So yeah, thought it was fun, nostalgic, nostalgia and Christmas come sort of hand in hand for me. So for me to be reading a book of something that I used to read when I was younger and it being Christmassy worked very well for me. Next up was another audiobook, was Twas the Nightshift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. I've read this before, gave it 4 stars again. Adam Kay is a comedian and a writer who was a junior doctor training to be a consultant. I think Adam got as far as being a registrar. So in the UK, you work your way up from being a junior doctor, F1, F2, might be, I think they're called SHOs now, then a registrar, but this takes years to get to consultant level. And it's very, very intensive work, particularly in the area that Adam's working in. Adam works in gynecology and delivering babies and things like that. So not sort of like, right, well, I've finished now, so I'll let you get on with delivering that baby by yourself and I'll be back later. So long hours, constant plans being cancelled, and pressures of the job, etc. And this is all documented in his first book, This Is Going to Hurt, which is one of my favourite books, gave it 5 stars. I work in the NHS, so I see some of these pressures myself. I'm not in an on the ward, I'm not in a clinical role, I'm in a clerical role. So I was able to sort of read and know what was happening and having seen that happen to some of my colleagues, and I love that book, and it's hilarious. Like, Adam is such a funny writer, but also heartbreaking at the same time, like, so well done. Anyway, so this is the Christmas version. So in the first book, Adam left out some Christmassy things, or things that he thought were a bit too gross and stuff, because they were too Christmassy, and then they've put together this very short, sort of, might even be 100 pages, book of Christmassy memories. Now, are some of them a bit sort of, like, maybe a bit made up to make them sound a bit Christmassier? Probably. But did I still really love it? Yeah. So I gave it 4 stars because I think some of them have been maybe a little bit over egged to make them sound Christmassy, or maybe a sort of Christmassy edge added to these stories. I mean, I can't say, I still really enjoyed it, fictionalised, but sometimes I just felt like it was maybe over egging it a little bit. But still 4 stars, like, really, really liked it. And if you've read This Is Going to Hurt, then this is an absolute amazing companion piece to read to it. So very much enjoyed it. And then the last 2 books, this one is a picture book that I got for my birthday from Jen. This is The Christmas Alphabet by Robert Sabuda. This is the deluxe 20th anniversary edition, so I believe there's been previous editions before this. Jen got this for me for my birthday, and it is, as it says on the tin, a Christmas alphabet of pop-up surprises. So if I just show you this one that I've opened the page up on, this is H through to K, and they're just so gorgeous, and it's just so nice to spend a lovely bit of time with it. Home. Some of the sort of engineering behind these pop-up books is just amazing. So that's home. I is for icicle, as you can see. J is for, I think it's joy. Let's have a look. Joy, yeah, very nice little Christmas tree there. And K, I think, might be kiss, with 2 little reindeers kissing. Yeah, it is. So an absolutely gorgeous sort of like adult book, but me and my niece, I think because they're so beautiful, my niece, who's normally a bit sort of like, rah, she just sat and just let me do every single one and had a little look at them, and we said, oh, what's that? And things like that. Lovely, absolutely beautiful, gorgeous gift, something that I'll be getting out every single Christmas and having a lovely time with it. And then the last book, because, I mean, can December go by without me reading A Christmas Carol? I think not. I listened to A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and this was narrated by Hugh Grant. It's currently free on Audible for Audible members, which was lovely. And yeah, I think every time I listen to or read A Christmas Carol, which I did last year as well, I don't think I did the year before, I sort of forget how ghosty and creepy it is, like particularly like the moments with the 2 children under the Ghost of Christmas Presents cloak and things like that. And because my go-to thought for A Christmas Carol is A Muppets Christmas Carol, and that's just with a thankful heart and a different girl and boy will be David. Nephew and niece to me. Nephew and niece to me. Thank you. So yeah, that's my sort of like go-to memory for when I'm reading A Christmas Carol, and I forget how spooky it is. However, I always really enjoy the story, and Hugh Grant performing it was wonderful as well. He's got very, very good sort of performance voice, puts on some good voices himself. Enjoyed it, but when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I remember that part in A Muppets Christmas Carol. That's the whole way through. Has anybody else got sort of like a famous book that they always refer to, like a film or an adaptation you've seen of it or something? Because I cannot separate A Muppets Christmas Carol from A Christmas Carol, I just can't. So here we go. 10 books that I've read in the month of December so far. As I said, there'll be no more wrapping ups for the rest of the year. That's because by the time I get around to it, it'll be January and nobody wants to hear about Christmas books in January. So if you do want to follow my reading for the rest of the month, then do head on over to my Instagram at Lauren and the Books and follow my reading reviews there. They will come up on my Instagram stories, and I've got little highlights on my page which show what I've read for the whole year if you're interested. And yeah, I'll see you all again tomorrow for another Vlogmas video. Goodbye!